Welcome to the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast, episode number 272 with Dr. Christopher Warren. Chris, could you go into just a little bit of background about yourself? And then I'd like to talk about the post that really made you stick out. And I said, I gotta talk to this guy about stuff.
Yeah, sure. So,
Mhm.
um, I've been in the construction, consulting, safety world for about 22 years now. Served in the Navy. After I got out of the Navy, I went and worked construction during the day and went to school in the evenings. And then I worked my way into safety just from a simple conversation of having a conversation with a safety guy on a construction site. And he was telling me a little bit about what they do and why they do it. And the guy was very passionate about it. And, I was always kind of safety conscious anyways, paying attention to the rules and I had some near misses myself as a construction worker, and it really kind of brought to light why we were being asked to wear certain things and do certain things when we were doing work operations. So I changed my major in school from a business management to occupational health and safety. Got an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree. Um, Went on to get a master's degree, and my PhD is actually in critical infrastructure, and that's by design. Um, so early on, I worked for a Department of Defense contractor, working exclusively out of the EM 385 1-1 and OSHA, and traveled around as a health and safety supervisor. Got to look at all different types of construction work and critical infrastructure work that was being constructed on different military bases and facilities. Then I went on to work for a tunneling company in Cleveland and got to experience what it was like to build a tunnel 200 and some feet underground, 28-foot diameter tunnel with tunnel boring machines, and a lot
Oh,
of crane
very
work.
neat. Yeah.
Everything was heavy. Got to witness the concrete segment machines and the hole throughs um, and all the challenges that came with those types of projects. And then I went on to serve as the chief safety officer for City of Cleveland's public utilities, which included Cleveland Water, Cleveland Public Power, and Water Pollution Control. So I got a good introduction into municipality safety, politics, a lot of stuff on politics, how things are procured and projects are done within the city, and the challenges that come along with that. I served there for about 6 years. I had a staff of about 24 safety and environmental professionals that reported to
Mhm.
me. And then I left there at the end, well, probably about towards the end of the COVID pandemic, and went on in the consulting world and worked for a firm out of the Cleveland area, and where we helped manufacturing, construction, municipalities, all different types of firms with not only safety but also environmental. So we get
Mhm.
into um, air quality control plans, um, reporting air emissions from plants, stormwater, um, inspections to spill prevention to control plans, these types of things. And then I got back into the Department of Defense work where I'm back at today, where now I serve as a director of health and safety for a company called CMS Corporation. They're headquartered out of Maumee, Ohio, and they serve all the different branches of the military for critical infrastructure projects. They work globally, so they got projects from the Philippines all the way over to Hungary. And I've got to travel extensively these last 3 years with them. June, I got to spend some time in the on the beautiful island of Guam, so that was kind of a new experience, with. And I'm gonna tell you right now, it's a long flight. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and I got some hobbies too outside of safety where I've been really grinding down on where the safety profession's going. I'm currently writing a book regarding some of the advances in technology and some of the things that are going to be facing industry. Because I'll tell you, David, I really think that the industry is in for a change. I think the United States and globally, we're going to see a change like we saw at the beginning of the 1900s with the Industrial Revolution, with this introduction of AI, with the introduction of robotics and humanoid robotics, and the phasing out of human labor in some areas. And I'm kind of retooling myself and looking forward. So that's a little bit about me.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. So the post that you had posted is safety is a junk drawer. And that
Yeah.
really made me sit down and chuckle for a few seconds. And then I was thinking about the junk drawers that I have at home. I have a lot of things that literally don't fit anywhere, and I'll just shove it there. And I know I need it at some point, and I'll figure it out at some point if it's even good. And then I really kind of started looking at what I do on a day-to-day basis, and I was like, wow, they really are kind of slowly but surely adding on like a little bit. It's not like a giant chunk where you would
Yeah.
do any pushback, but it's like that little bit by little bit. I'd like to understand your thoughts on that.
So, I saw it early in my career, where you started having safety professionals expected to know environmental. And in my opinion, those are two different disciplines completely. Okay. When you're talking about digging through the CFR 40s and EPA requirements for facilities and construction sites and all the regulation that comes with that and the proper way to execute that in the workplace or for an employer, I always kind of took exception to those dual-headed roles for a plant safety guy. What
Hmm.
what I typically saw when I would go into manufacturing sites or those types of facilities is you'd see the safety guy buried in his office. He's not on the plant floor, okay? He's not walking around interacting with the workers or understanding the actual work and process, that the workers are going through on a day-to-day basis, and some of the the true, I call them true safety challenges of performing work in whether it's manufacturing or construction sites. And then, that wave kind of, became the norm, right? Where you saw roles that were advertised for EHS manager, environmental health and safety managers, where they had to have the discipline of the environmental and the safety side. And I've never seen it in all my years. I've never seen it effectively executed by a single individual.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
that's a plan, unless he's got a good support team where he's able to delegate environmental responsibilities, basically get a summary, get his metrics, report it out, make sure that the plant's compliant with those. I've never seen it properly executed. Then, fast forward a little bit, then we start seeing safety roles advertised with environmental health, safety, and sustainability manager. Okay, so now we're looking at everything environmental, everything health and safety for the plant, the facilities, the site, for the workers, and for the facility. Now we're looking at getting into sustainability, where now you're looking at the efficiency of the plant, right? We want to
Hmm.
be able to report those numbers out. And, I've sat in meetings, some professional meetings when I was doing consulting, when they were presenting the aggressive sustainability goals that were pushed, especially in the Biden era.
Hmm.
Um, and I was like, I don't know how somebody can juggle all of that. Like, I just don't see how can be an effective role for a safety professional, right?
Right, exactly.
Then you get into like when I was serving as chief safety officer for public utilities, I got involved in security matters, right? Hardening the facilities, a big security project that went on at Cleveland Water, and assisted the chief of security with that project, and was way more involved than probably he was in that project. Testing the facilities, testing the hardness, got into active shooter training for the public utilities police, setting that up, witnessing it, participating in it, make sure it's administered correctly. Getting into NERC and FERC requirements for the substations that we had, and the environmental requirements for the substations, Cleveland Water, and even the sewer department, making sure that we weren't, dispersing too much gray water into the local streams and these types of things when we'd have to do utility repairs to underground utilities. Sitting in EPA meetings because there's a local business that was polluting groundwater or soil, and it was discovered, and getting involved in those conversations. Being a project manager, the kind of the the mantra when I was chief safety officer was, if not you, then who? Okay, David. So
Hmm.
if there was like, hey, we have these old water plants that have these flat roofs that guys have to climb up on ladders and service HVAC units, roofs, whatever the case may be. but there's not proper fall protection. Parapets are too low, so we need to put a fall protection system on these roofs. So not only do our employees have safe access to this equipment, but so do our vendors who come and service this equipment, that are contracted with us. Great idea. Make it happen. So that's writing the request for proposal, going
Hmm.
to bid, uh,
Hmm.
selecting, sitting down and selecting the lowest bid out of the bidders, going to a council meeting where you the committee has to approve the vendor you selected and they meet all the different, EOE requirements and all these small business requirements and everything. Then you finally get that through there and you finally have this thing project funded, approved. It's like a 2-year process. But you project manage the whole thing. You learn a little bit of everything, which is cool, but it completely deviates from your primary purpose of health and safety. And
Right.
then you get into, you got to know in safety these days, you got to know emergency response. And that's not just active shooter, but you know, how your people are going to respond to different types of building and facility and construction site emergencies, writing those types of plans. We even have weather related emergency plans that have to be detailed. Like where I work now, we work in locations where they have tsunamis, right? Not
Hmm.
just tornadoes. And we have locations like down at Cape Canaveral where you have to write hurricane plans. You got to plan for all those things. So you got to kind of become a knowledgeable in those areas and what appropriate actions to take in those types of things. You become a first aid responder, and I know some safety professionals are even trained to EMT level, right?
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
you got to obtain, especially I would say in construction, and I don't want to dismiss our facilities folks that work in factories and stuff, but you've got to get, some basic baseline knowledge of engineering. You got to know how stuff works, how it goes together, what it will release while it's manufacturing something or while it's being operated. You've got to know how to put together different fall protection systems based on application, running this in construction all the time, right, David? Where
Hmm.
you've got to take a scenario, you got to manage the risk, write up the selection of equipment to use, what's going to work best in that application. Make sure you do the math on it right, that you got the proper fall distance, that you got the proper anchor points. Your anchor points have been evaluated either through a non-certified or certified means, right? So you run into those types of things. And when I was on the tunnel job, there was a lot of engineering involved in that, where we had a lot of ventilation issues. So some of
Hmm.
that industrial hygiene stuff came into play where we had to do um, testing, pull CFM readings in our tunnels. We had to make sure the fans were operating at the proper CFM. We had to put together a daily functional report for our daily meetings that shows what the readings were, how the fans were configured for the different drop shafts and the main shafts. We had a lot of silica exposure potential, so there was a lot of sampling, a lot of worker and area sampling to make sure that we weren't overexposing employees. We did some micro
Hmm.
tunneling where you had to sample the employees because the tunnels were only 10 foot in diameter. And obviously they had extreme exposure to silica, and you had to upgrade the mask from half mask to full face respirators during these operations because it was too cold for the spray bars, the engineering controls to work in the wintertime. So
Hmm.
you get into that. You get into, you got some safety professionals that are in the medical world and pharmaceutical
Hmm.
world. You got to learn all of the biohazards, toxicology, and a lot of these roles nowadays, when you see them advertised, they want all these multiple certifications, right? I
Hmm.
think I recently saw an article that a gal posted on LinkedIn where she stated a truth, and I thought it was very powerful in what she wrote. And that truth is that a CSP or safety professional is a totally different job than a CIH.
Hmm.
They are.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
They are.
Hmm.
They're two areas of expertise. Now,
Hmm.
if you can master both, good for you. You
Right.
dive into that world of industrial hygiene, it's a rabbit hole, and it's its own discipline. So, you see these roles advertised where they want a CIH or a CSP for a role that may not even require a CIH. Because typically, I would assume that most roles, even factory setting, that if you do need to get a CIH involved in some kind of sampling, you want that to be third party anyways, so that you don't have biased results,
Right,
right?
right,
So
right, exactly.
you're going to hire a consultant. Okay. Do I
Mm-hmm.
think the safety professional needs to know industrial hygiene and be able to recognize the hazards and use the hierarchy of controls to determine how to protect workers from chemicals, fumes, dust, mists, and the actual things that can get released that can affect our health? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different discipline, and it takes a lot of study and it takes a lot of time to get very good in that field from the industrial hygienists that I've dealt with.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Um, so, then you get into, hazardous waste. If your site is disposing of hazardous waste or has DOT implications, you got to know that. You got to go on RCRA, HAZWOPER, and all the standards and requirements that come with that. And I mean, I see that you're a CHMM, and that's right, probably right in your world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another area of expertise that you need to learn. And then, I know we were talking before we started recording, there's been a big focus on mental health these last couple of years, especially in the
Mm-hmm.
construction industry. Every conference I go to, we're talking about it, which is a good thing. Even during Construction Safety Week, that was a conversation that I had with the crew that I out in California that I had the pleasure of spending the week with. And the thing is here's another hat they want you to wear, where they even got these mental health first aid responder courses that they're advertising out there, and you see some employers wanting their safety professionals getting those, and then you're delving into the world of psychology, right? Are you equipped with the tools to properly give somebody sound advice, life advice? One of the challenges we have in the construction industry when they talk about this topic, they skirt around the real issues that construction workers are really having. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And those issues are most of us construction workers have to spend a lot of time away from our families. Okay. Most of these guys are road dogs living out of hotels or company paid for housing. Some of them, like company I work for, they have a 5 week rotation. You imagine not seeing your wife and kids for 5 weeks
Right.
and the strain that would cause in your marriage. You can get
Mm-hmm.
disconnected from your spouse and your kids, because that day-to-day interaction is important. So you see a lot of guys that are getting lonely on the road. Okay. They start drinking, right? Some of the older
Mm-hmm.
guys, not only are they drinking, they're taking prescription drugs to cope. It ends up being a coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Then that loneliness starts affecting their mental health. And I've seen it time and time again, David, where when these guys are on the road and then all of a sudden their marriages become strained, they're distracted at work, they're depressed. Their wives aren't returning their calls for 3 or 4 days at a time. They don't know what's going on at home. So their focus at work is completely void.
Mm-hmm.
Then I've seen a lot of them, it leads to divorce. And then you have to deal with the aftermath of their divorce. They're losing half their assets. They're probably selling their house. They're definitely not seeing their kids as often as they'd like to. And they're in financial ruins. They're going to work. They're like, what's the point of all this? These guys get to that part of their lives where they're just like, what's the point? Right. And unfortunately, some go further and get to that point where they're like, what's the point of living? So, yeah, I've talked to a lot of guys on the sites. I've fielded calls even at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night from guys that were going through, potentially going through divorce with their spouses. And like, what do I do? I don't know what to do. And I've seen it time and time again. And then the other thing is too, there's a lot of peer pressure on construction sites still. There's a mentality I see in the construction industry where, it's cool to drink and go out, smash a 12 pack of beer at night with your coworkers when you're all staying at hotels. And for some guys, they can get out of that rut, not addicted to alcohol, but a lot of these guys become alcoholics and it starts
Mm.
affecting their work performance, their attendance, their mental health, and it just compounds the other problems I just spoke of.
Mm-hmm.
So, so when I talk about a junk drawer in my article, and I put this together when I was flying back from out west on one of my trips, because I'm like, man, I think about all the things that we're supposed to be responsible for and do as a professional. where I think the focus is really deviated from where we can provide the most value. We should be
Right.
an asset, a resource to our employers. We should be technically strong in the different areas that we have workplace exposures, whether it be confined space, excavation, manufacturing, like conveyors and these types of things, fall protection, um, or being able to know the work and the phases of work to be able to identify the hazards and plan for them before they happen, right? I really think
Mhm.
we've kind of deviated from that. And it's kind of, when you pile this much stuff into the junk drawer, it's really diluted the technical skills of safety professionals.
Yes, yes.
It's like,
There's
go ahead.
there's also a anytime that you have to change gears, it's not efficient too. You know, if I have to go from tackling this kind of problem to this problem to this problem, there's always that cost. You know, I've lost focus. Now I have to focus on something else. And um I like to think of it almost like a pizza. You know, you can only be focused on so much. And you could be focused on the whole pizza as safety only, but then if you did all those different slices in there, it makes it really hard then, to really sit down. Um, and in talking to other safety professionals, they almost kind of feel like they're just running from fire to fire, and it's just not a kind of a nice planned. This is how I tackle a hazard. This is how I tackle the like priority of that hazard too, because you can't do everything at the same time, you know.
Correct.
So
Correct. I agree with that
yeah.
statement. And another thing too is we're teachers. We are expected to train and teach and stuff. And and I recently had an ego check. Okay, all
Mhm.
right, and I think every safety professional needs to check their ego once in a while. All right, and what I mean by that is go back and do the stuff you did at the beginning of your career. Okay. I recently started
Mhm.
teaching first aid CPR again. I did that at the beginning of my career. I'm a director. I got all these crazy initials behind me, whatever. I've had all this experience. But one thing that I realized going back and something as simple as just teaching first aid CPR to construction workers, it really put my ego in check. It's like, you know what? I forgot about the passion that I had for actually teaching and interacting with the workers and telling stories, war stories between each other. And sometimes when we get so far in our career and we get these big titles and stuff like that, I challenge every person that reached that pinnacle in their career to go back to the basics, you know,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it really does help you remember why you got into the field, why
Mhm.
you got a passion for this career path. When you're dealing with financials and metrics and pre-construction meetings or capital improvement projects at a facility, or you're dealing with data that you received from a manufacturing line about potential aerosol exposures, and you're putting together some professional technical report and stuff like that, you can really lose sight of why you got into it and why you got passion for it. And what I see is a lot of safety professionals, David, and you've probably seen this too, they get burned out.
Oh
You see
yes,
a
yes,
lot of people leave this field.
yes,
You know,
yes.
I would say probably a year ago, I was talking to a guy on a construction site, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're in safety." He goes, "Yeah, I used to have my CHST, and I used to be safety over this roofing company and this and that." And I'm like, "Why'd you get out of it?"
Mhm.
And he kind of was like, "I was burned out. I was tired of not having management support. I was tired of being mocked when I went on construction sites and not being supported by my frontline supervision. I got tired of chasing my own tail, and they kept piling on more and more responsibilities. Next thing I know, I'm sitting down doing human resource orientation with new workers." And he goes, and then my time in the field got less and less. And he goes, I just decided I just wanted to go back into construction and be an operator, and I'm happy with that.
Hmm. Hmm. I think the one thing that really helps me out is that I do everything I can every day to try to spend a good hour, hour and a half just getting out, talking to folks, show me how this works, show me how that works. Just trying to build that rapport with people then,
Yeah.
go out, solve issues. And you're right. You can really be pulled into a lot of directions when people start saying, I want you to look at this bid and that bid, and we're going to put safety here and that. Boy, your time just gets, your time is not really your time. Your schedule is dictated by somebody else having to get something done. And at times that's necessary, but we
Yeah,
can't lose focus of the people, talking to them.
I agree. And I
Mm-hmm.
recently had an experience out in California where I was walking through a facility we were renovating, and these guys were preparing to use an overhead crane to remove some debris that they were disposing of in a utility room, a utility basement. And I grabbed the foreman and I said, "Look, can we just talk about what you're doing really quick?" And we just had a good conversation. I said, "Can I just make some suggestions?" So I was able to show him, where he needs to place his guy to receive the trash hopper from the load, because he was just letting it just lower down without any kind of control and these types of things. And I was talking to the worker and explaining to him why it's important to receive the load and have it controlled as you're bringing it down so it's not causing additional damage. So we had good conversation, did a little bit of coaching, field coaching, and I kind of really see, especially, and I don't think it's unique to construction. I shouldn't say that, but I think that too is where a safety professional can be powerful and gain trust in the workers, is saying this guy knows the work, he's making good suggestions, and he's more of a coaching role and not policing us, right? And
Yep.
say, hey, here's a better way to do this. Let me show it to you. Let me show you. If you physically show them, it's how to do different things, and explain why, and they understand why, and then they're like, hey, that was a good idea. I'm going to start doing it that way in the future. And I having that interaction and that face to face is critical. You got safety
Hmm.
people that sit in offices, they're buried in environmental paperwork and safety work and sustainability work and these types of things. They don't get the floor time, the face time. They don't get to know the workers well or what they're doing well. Um, you lose credibility.
Oh
You
yeah.
and then especially if you're in a position where you're just going out there enforcing rules. Like, well, Bob leaves the office every day at 10:30 a.m., does a walk before lunch. He's nailing 6 or 7 people for not having hand protection on and safety glasses. And not the only time we interact with this guy is when somebody's getting written up or we're doing something wrong.
Right,
That's
right, right. Mhm.
You've already lost the fight.
Yes, yes. Well, anytime that your attitude is, I have to write up somebody, I have to be a cop. All of us have sped on the highway. We see a cop, we slow down, and then as soon as we don't see him again, we speed back up again. The guys do the same thing at work, you know.
Yep.
If they don't see that big why, that something has to be done out there, you know.
The
And
only
some,
time we see that attitude change, I think, David, is when they've actually witnessed a bad incident,
oh, right, right,
and that safety light goes off going, oh yeah, these are the
right.
type of instances that led to that guy getting hurt.
Right, right, right. And I think that's why that we have to coach people, because I can sit there and supervise somebody and tell them they're doing something wrong the whole day, but eventually I have to leave. I got something else that I have to do. And if I haven't built that rapport with that person, what they're going to say is, all right, awesome, he's gone. Now I can do it the way that I want to, and just hurry up and do it.
The,
Oh,
the key in that, though, is you have to learn the work.
oh yes. Mhm.
Not only should you be able to recognize hazards, but you should become with your toolbox full of solutions. Because if you can just recognize a hazard and stop work and go, you figure it out, but you're not doing it the safe way, you lose credibility and you're actually hurting your employer, I think.
Mhm.
Because, if I'm on a construction site and I see an unsafe condition and I've got to say timeout, I've already have a solution in my head I want to talk to them about. Like, hey, here's a better way to rig this. You can fly it this way. You put your tagline here. All right. This is a better way of doing it. And then
Right.
once it's able to be demonstrated as a better way to do it, you have credibility. And you can
Hmm.
explain how stuff goes together. And I had this is a few years ago now, but I had guys on a project site, they couldn't believe I could read blueprints because I had the blueprints out and I was looking at the way that the roof was going to be set by the crane and everything. And I was making some suggestions on where guys could be for the connection and everything. And they're just like, oh my God, you can read the prints. I'm like, I can read all these prints. And they're like,
Hmm.
that's impressive. Like, so you gain some credibility and they start to listen. And I think when you notice a win is when you're getting those calls like, hey man, I'm going to send you a picture. I want to get your
Right.
I
Yeah.
want to get
Uh-huh.
your opinion on how we can do this better.
Yep.
I
Yep.
sat on a Teams call the other night with one of my Guam team members. It was like 9:30 in the evening. He says, "Hey, can you jump on Teams real quick?" Yeah. I jumped on Teams. He goes,
Mhm.
"I want to show you this utility room we got to work on. We got all this equipment. We've got to figure out how to set up scaffold and have fall protection because we're going to have to walk between different scaffold decks and areas." So we sat there and we tooled it all out. We planned the whole thing out and how he's going to write his fall protection plan and what equipment he's going to purchase and the additional training that a couple of the laborers needed before they actually do this work operation in October. And when they're calling you and asking you for your expertise, you're winning. You really
Yes.
do.
It's always better to get that proactive call as opposed to that reactive call.
Right.
Anytime that it's on the proactive side, you've already won with that crew. It doesn't mean that you won with all the crews out
Right.
there, but yeah, yeah. Chris, this has been a fantastic talk, but we are out of time. I want to get your point of view on a lot more topics, but we are just out of time. Could you
Yeah,
take
no
a couple
problem.
seconds and let the guys know where they can find you, connect if they have any follow-on questions, of course, where they can
Sure.
um, where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me, of course, on LinkedIn under Christopher Warren, PhD. You can also reach out to me via email through my consulting company, Beacon Shores. My email is Beacon Shores RMS, which is short for Beacon Shores Risk Management Services at gmail.com.
Mhm. Fantastic, Chris. Thank you so much. This has been a great talk, and I have so many other topics to get your opinion on. So thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody and have a safe day.
All right. Thank